Oh, that'll be good. I get my own background elevator music. I'm excited for this one. So with it being at 10:32, so people are most likely walking their way from panel 1 to panel 2 in a sort of Attack on Titan-esque slow road, just putting things in their mouth that's flying at them or on the ground, what have you. And kudos to the real MAGFest hero who pissed in the second elevator. True American hero. Welcome, greetings and beatings from both the front row crew and myself. This is called Beyond D&D. I'm excited because MAGFest Labs marks the 23rd convention I have performed this panel at. Long story short, Geek Nights is over 1,000 episodes. You can find the long-form podcast at frontrowcrew.com. Sign up for their forums. The guys who run it are called Rim and Scott. If you think there's something too obscure for two nerds to talk about, you are wrong. They have talked about it and argued about it incessantly. They argue, they banter. It's called Jewish foreplay. No, it's not. Oh, no, it's not. No, you're wrong. You're more wrong. Great hour-and-a-half long episodes. They did an entire string representing for Revolutionary Girl Utena, and this was one of the first panels they presented at one of their first PAX. They perpetually perform at places at either MAGFest or every PAX show. I think they've done over 40 panels at the Penny Arcade Expo. I asked if I could take over for this panel. What Beyond D&D is going to be is an apology to the hardcore D&D fans. I approach gaming from the storytelling and the collective storytelling perspective. I'm a stand-up comedian. I've worked in improv, I've written plays, I've worked in professional haunted houses. I draw from the people around the table to ensure that they are paying attention and they feel like they are the main characters. I'm going to approach all the quick-to-learn, quick-to-play games in this panel in more of a form of an improv troupe or a collection of people. Because if we've learned anything from podcasting and forcing comedy films over the years, comedy works best and stories work best when people know each other. When you have that high context underlying, if you drop any Simpsons quote around my friends, we finish the episode verbatim from there. Those are the kind of things that we can draw from quick and fun. So I'm going to approach RPG writing and development in this panel as though you're trying to either tell the kind of story or genre story that you want to. There are great games out there that only sit down and say, you love Kung Fu Movie? I love Kung Fu Movie. Here's Ultimate System to write Kung Fu Movie. Maybe system does not work best for fantasy dungeon crawl. You have something for that. When I say RPG, we got to break those words down. The role and the play, sometimes the role play, depending on, two consenting adults, and the game itself, the mechanical base. When I say tabletop RPG, when I say Dungeons and Dragons, when I say World of Darkness, when I say sometimes Shadowrun, Call of Cthulhu, your core pillar 4, this is the image that we have. There's something salty, something sweet, something liquid around the table. People have pens, they have papers, they have dice that are going to represent random chance. Scott Johnson's beautiful balding crescent is beginning to show like the crimson sun over the Serengeti. And people are around, everyone around the table is committed to telling a story that they don't know how it's going to end. It is, for the most part, retrospective storytelling. I told you before, Caitlin. I told you before. But let's break down role-playing game itself. This is by far one of our Final Fantasy, one of our most common ideas of a JRPG, a Japanese role-playing game, because whatever Final Fantasy you take over, you are playing the role of either Cloud Strife or whomever is leading your first party there in, I think that's either Final Fantasy 4. There we go. Oh, I see my Dragoon in the top. He be the 4. No matter what, you are directing the character. You are taking on that role to go left and right or up or down. And the choices the character makes are the choices that you should directly have in shaping the world itself. But then there are some games in which we try to make the argument in this panel to be more open-minded, to rarely say no. I want to really reinforce that when committing to GMing or committing to being a player, the word no should go out the window. Coming from an improv background, everything gets responded with yes and or, that sounds like a terrible idea. Let's see where it goes. My players know when I smile, it's already too late. Does anyone recognize the screenshot of the game that I have in front of us? Call it out. It is Dragon Warrior. For this example, we'll call him Gainer, although you can also say Gainer. You play through the entire dungeon crawl of this wonderful game, Dragon Warrior. You get to the one chance where you get to show Gainer's potential character, the one chance to show him as a person, the one choice he gets other than slash or stab. You get the princess. She's in the right castle. You corner the game. You are right before the ending credits. She asks, "Does thou love me, Gainer?" Now, hang on. I don't know you. This is the first time we've even seen or mentioned a princess in the whole damn game. And you're given the option, yay or nay. If you say no, what does the princess say? "But thou must." And she asks again, "Does thou love me, Gainer?" "No, but thou must." "Does thou?" You can go into that until your system leaks out, until the cauliflower creatures rise from the depths and take over society as they have before. Spoiler alerts. If you say yes, ending credits play, the game is done. That's kind of an unfair setting, if you will. It's giving the player something very unfair, because while we're in this room because we love Dungeons & Dragons, it is the great beer and pretzels and man stink game that it is. But D&D sets you up with as many options as you want, despite the fact that no matter what, you're going to kick down the door, kill who's ever in the room, take your stuff, and feel good about it. That is the system it imposes. If you want to try any other choice, the game doesn't set itself up for something else. This is where the last 15 years of RPG, independent writers, and the internet have come together. Let's go into some other examples of role-playing games. This is a LARP or a late-night Ren Fair. You will, in some cases, have a character sheet. There are some mechanics of the kind of spells for the packets you're throwing, or the number you're going to yell as you're hitting your friend, or not so much your friend, because we all know what happened last year at MAGFest. And yet it's much more RP than it is G. If anything, the R and the P would be font size 24, and the G would be closer to size 12 on an actual sheet. And yet, we do see RP somewhere else in our lives. A straight-up play. In this case, a screen caption from Hamlet, one of the great plays. That is by no doubt an RP with very, 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 very little G. It's the most streamlined G that has ever been shown out there. And yet, you can't say that an actor is not playing, shout out to all my Gen Xers out there. It's one of the best Christopher Lee roles. The role and the play have to come to a balance, and the biggest one that they have to come into a balance with is the G. The games that I want to talk about are great gateways for actors who are much more the expressive ones, who want to get a little mechanics to curb and direct them where to go on the Plinko board of choices. Versus the hardcore, everything is a chart, everything is math. I want to try to play the character, play the intention. Every game you play, every board game can be a role-playing game. The moment you add intention, the moment you have intention and a goal, the moment you pick up that piece, sorry, Mom, your red piece goes back to the beginning because he slayed my uncle in cold blood. That's the quickest way to get your grandmother to stop bringing out board games on Thanksgiving. You're welcome. I've saved your Thanksgiving for next time. We want to get back to this balance somehow, where you have the option of either saying, my character wants to try diplomacy, or you put on your special hat, put on your wizard cloak, your wizard coke. That would be a fun Harry Potter spinoff. Your wizard cloak and robe, and you sit down. I'm going to fully play this to the hilt. We're going to improvise this scene. You should always have that option of back and forth. Essentially, every tabletop RPG you're ever going to show, every scenario that you're going to come face to face with, is really two things either being combined or multiplied. Conflict resolution, which is the G in RPG. It's rolling dice, it's drawing the card, it's the random chance that you have, plus your modifier or plus your negative modifier for how well this can go. You know, the barbarian is really Horrigan, Torrigan, He-Man, Smashy. He's great at that. Corner him in a RP scene, you're really going to have to talk to Senor Orc Hammer to the face. Those are my options. Combine that with retrospective, collaborative storytelling. The short games I'm going to talk about put some of the narrative power back in the player's hand. Some people, it's too much. Some people are cockroach players when it comes to tabletop RPG. They're the ones who, when the spotlight isn't on them, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. All right, what does Karen do? I can't take the pressure. No, you're the wizard. What do you want to do? I don't know. It's too much. Shut up, Karen, then you shouldn't have played the wizard. Sorry, middle of 7, only boy. We've had to learn over the years. Because any story that you run through, whether you're going to win the dungeon or fail the dungeon or seduce or not seduce, it is retrospective. Nothing is more exciting than listening to someone the morning after an intense D&D shoot, because then everything has been glazed over. You don't understand! I swung off the chandelier, I threw my battle axe, split the vampire's shoulder in twain, because you and I both know last night it was roll, math, poke, racial slur, math. Yeah, hit him for 7. Yay. It's all retrospective. At some point, conflict resolution, approaching the door. How do you choose to get through the door? What do you roll to see whether you get through the door or not? Should result into a reward system. In some cases, it's a little bit of XP. In some cases, it's the item, the MacGuffin, the red herring that you're going to need. In some cases, you just get rewarded with the next scenario. The typical D&D setup up top is that holy fart-smelling DM holding the holy hand grenade of Antioch. You've got the player character on the bottom left. He's decided to be Horgboard the Borgboard. And over on the right, you've got various NPCs with their jazz hands out and various monsters that you're going to fight. And with a streamlined system like D&D, while it has tried to expand more on the RP section, while it's tried to expand diplomacy or intimidate, for the most part, that game has always been very fight central. And if you don't know what you're entering in, especially if you come across this, you've got the barbarian, and here comes a great RP scene. Doesn't matter what character voice you're going to throw in there. Doesn't matter what backstory you're approaching with the character. If the PC really only focuses on one thing and is playing an RPG like a min-maxing video game, it's going to end in one way or another. Assassin's Creed players are the hardest to get into a game. Moving on. There should be a step, and in some cases it doesn't have to be numerical or empirical. Sometimes the reward can be a better RP bonus in a later scene, and when I get to Mouse Guard or the Burning Wheel, you'll see what I mean by that example. But what about player versus player conflict? Eventually, in any longer game, the rogue is going to turn to the paladin and say, how can you call yourself lawful good? You literally went back to the village, skinned the rest of the kobolds, and wearing them as a hat.
I'm lawful good, it says so on my sheet.
Unless there is a system in the game where the player can fight the player, you have to suspend disbelief that these people are going to work together, or you're just going to get kicked out of the party, or ultimately it can end that way. Because the barbarian min-max is better than any bard ever can. And yet, this case will also come up. Unless it is written in the rules, there is nothing prompting the GM to listen to the players. There's nothing prompting the GM to just turn the dungeon, because they're hiding behind a screen. There's nothing that stops them from just alternating, I want them to explore that room, I need them to explore that room, because I've been working on my Scottish accent all week. They will fight, they will deal with the Scottish goblin midwife, and they will like it. This is unfair. And it should be seen as unfair. Some of the games I'm going to talk about substantially write in the rules that there should be a two-way communication continuously with the person hiding behind their 6-inch tall paper screen. Otherwise, you've got the DM railroad, and there's only one place where the DM railroad can really end with the party. Hulk bought round trip. Hulk will have round trip ticket. Hulk not listen to you, Amtrak. Because when you eliminate the GM, when you eliminate someone who works as the showrunner, as the project manager, as the rest of the world and the rest of the universe, which is the GM's job, you can go down a railroad in some cases. The players can find themselves lost without necessary direction because they don't know where they want to go. They don't know the story that they want to tell. It's about balance. It's about listening, a give and a take. It's not saying no, but yes and. Let's see where it goes. Because every game I'm gonna talk about is going to fit somewhere on this interesting chart. Now, straight games with 0 RP whatsoever are over here. This here is Candyland. This here is Candy Crush. This here is Two Dots. Over here, with no rules whatsoever, this is a straight play. If you do a straight play with a bunch of guys, this is opening night at the Improv. This is an improv troupe down here. Dungeons & Dragons ends up being so GM reliant and game mechanic, you can really put it somewhere in this core, this area. The games I'm about to go into are all over, and that's just fine. If you put the dot down here, improv troupe. Dot over here, scripted play. Dot all the way up at the Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch, novel. And you don't want to be forcing your players to run through your own novel. There's a reason we stopped GMing, the reason we stopped playing with Alex in high school was because every boss fight would be his stepmother coming back again and again and again. Last time Denise was a Hydra, now she's a vampire, now she's back as a Lich. Is there something you want to tell us, Alex? You don't know her like I do! Are you okay? Annie, you okay? You okay, Alex? I'm stuck on the caution tape, which, because the caution tape itself is now leading to bodily injury, I think it's a moot point. It's like being knocked out by an airbag. It defeats its own purpose. But I chose not to. And my resolution? No reward. Awesome, we're doing great on time. The reason I bring up this cartoon, this was originally meant to be a statement about the Department of Education. I bring this up for games as well. You can design a system that tells the perfect kind of story that you want. You can absolutely have a story that works great on horror survival genre if that's what you want. There are great games that do only kung fu movies specifically, where someone loves a series or a genre or wants to tell that kind of story so badly. D&D sets it up as a bunch of ragtag people who have no reason to be working together, go into someone's house, kill them, take their stuff, and feel good about themselves. That's, in a long story short, a lot of the stories that you're going to run into it. There are different games for different fames, different strokes for different folks, and I'm hoping, as we jump into it, you're going to find something that works for you. Let's start off. How do I describe Inspectors? Inspectors is suburban Ghostbusters, the RPG. Boom. That's it. Just as funny or just as dark as anything. The book itself, 60 pages. 60. You can read it in an afternoon. You can read it in an hour and a half. The idea being that this is a world in which the supernatural is much more of an annoyance rather than a world-stopping horror. It can get to a world-stopping horror if you don't show up to work enough. Here's the deal. All the rules of Inspectors are right there on the freaking character sheet. Here's the deal. For whatever action you want to do, you take you start with 9 dice, you put the 9 dice somewhere between your academics, anything you roll for something smart, your athletics for anything you do physical. All of it. One stat. It's wonderful. You have technology for all your wacky ghost traps, or in some cases, the refurbished ice cream truck / Wienermobile that one party ended up driving around Pittsburgh, and your contact for all of your people skills. You put skills for anywhere from 1 to 4 dice, and that's the number of dice you pick up for any kind of an action. I need to outrun the werewolf. Pick up your athletics. I got an athletics of 2. You can take from the company. You can pull from, on the right, you'll see that there's a credit card, which will add to your technology roll. There's a library card, which will add to your academics roll, or the gym card. Let's say your team's really all well off and they've got 10 resource dice that the company owns, because the unspoken 5th or 6th player is the company, where all of your money and resources are. I really want to outrun the werewolf. I've only got 2 athletics, and I already took an injury, so I'm only rolling 1. Let me take 2 from the gym. If your highest dice is a 4, 5, or 6, you, the player, describe the outcome. You, the player. If you roll a 1, 2, or 3, yo. The GM describes the outcome, and it can hose you as much as necessary. And then below that is the stress test. You run into weird, horrible things. You might get injured. You might get cut off in traffic. Someone scolds you. Someone curses you. You roll a stress test, and then you start taking in modifiers. The description and the background is something you just give to flesh out your character. This is your part-time day job. No one wants to be a full-time inspector. It's like working the damn Chipotle. No one really wants to deal with the Slimers and the Goobers all the time. So let's say you come from a car mechanic background. You can use your background and argue with the GM to get more bonuses on a roll. For example, Contact. You're at an auto body shop. Guess where you used to roll for years? Or you get into the Yakuza drift racing. Guess who knows cars better? You get extra dice for that. Let's say you're swinging a wrench at a monster. You've worked with wrenches your whole life. You're going to get extra to that athletics roll. And you use that background to specialize this character just in that way you want. Just in however way you want. And Inspectors has a brilliant mechanic I've never seen in another game before. It cuts away to a reality TV cutaway called
The Chair.
The joy of using
The Chair.
one player per scene, once per game, can sit in
The Chair.
under a spotlight and talk to the other players as though it were a reality TV, which means they can set something up, they can foreshadow something, or they can rewrite something. And if you give one of the players an adjective, a characteristic to play to, you just get more dice for that. We were just about to start. I think it was Mr. Stolviet. He wanted to meet the party midnight in the city graveyard. He's wearing all black. He's got a thick Transylvanian accent. The party knows where I'm setting it up. Dan raises his goddamn hand. He moves into
The Chair.
and he says, none of us were prepared for Mr. Stolviet to turn out to be a werewolf. What we were really surprised at was when he and Mark's character fell in love and got married. It's going to happen now. It must happen because someone brought out
The Chair.
You guys are cornered in the last bits of a Home Depot. The zombies are coming in. There's nowhere else for you to go. Someone raises their hand. Thankfully, that guy with the 18-wheeler had such anger issues when I cut him off in traffic. His 18-wheeler slams through the back, opening up and giving us a chance to escape. Can that happen? It is now! Because he sacrificed
The Chair.
Thank you, The Chair. We'll see you again. Inspectors runs that quick, that loose, that fun. It's roll, you describe it, or I describe it, and always bounce off your other players. The faster, the looser, the more fun it can be. You can also eventually allocate as many dice as you want to the bank, which is right under the inspector's card on the top right. The bank, has to be a separate color, because if you roll badly on the bank die, you can use it to enhance any other roll. If you roll a 1 on the bank die, no matter what you rolled, you take away all the dice from the company. You bankrupted the company. Like when Charles decided he was going to combine the ghost trap with the gold-plated Roomba using everyone's 401ks. He rolls a 1. The Roomba has cornered the electrical gremlin that it needs to trap. But because it's a Roomba, its original programming took over, and it sensed dust in the school basement. So the ghost trap Roomba, with all of their life savings, went down to fulfill its duty, leaving them to grapple an electrical gremlin. Oh, Roomba. Rest in peace. From Inspectors, because anyone who's anyone, you want to play in the Ghostbusters universe. It's just too much fun not to. You want to break the technology. You want to do some serious damage. You want to mess stuff up. This is the game for you. It's called Inspectors. Now, this is one of the games that I'm going to be running from 5 to 8 upstairs, The Extraordinary Adventures of Baron Munchausen. There is no need for a pencil or a pen or a character sheet. You have poker chips. This is a competitive storytelling game where you tell a self-glorifying story about how awesome you are, and your friends call you out on your bullshit with a poker mechanic. The idea being, it is the year 1780, blah, 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 blah. You and a bunch of other glorious barons are sitting around as the gathering of the barons, and you prompt one of your friends on the right with an amazing story about themselves. And I'll set it up for you basically. You only have as many coins as you have barons around the table. That's how many times you can add a complication or try to contradict a baron's facts. Here's the deal. Baron, why don't you tell us about the story? You discovered the source of the Nile and what you found there. Ideally, you want to keep it to like the post-Revolutionary War, late 1780s, or if you want, like when I do the show at pony conventions, I set it all in Equestria. Whenever I do this game after school for elementary school students, I set it all in Disney movies. Your characters must be from a Disney movie, etc. I try to limit it so that within that box they can be more creative. It helps them tremendously. So, Baron, how'd you discover the source of the Nile? Well, everyone always asks that question, of course. There I was, sailing down the Mediterranean in my ship. They go for first blood. But, Baron, everyone knows that summer the Mediterranean was dry as a bone. How were you sailing down a dried seabed? You have two options. Baron telling the story. You've got like 5 minutes. You can either put one of your own poker chips on top to dismiss it, in which it's out of the game, or you put it in your back pocket and you roll with it. Well, I was sailing in my airship, of course, yes, my mighty dirigible, which had been made of several floating air bladders from several blue whales as we were floating above the continent of Africa. It just goes like that. It's yes, and there's no, there's no dismissing, or if someone's having trouble, just drop a poker chip and flesh stuff out. How were you able to blanket blank? We had someone, the prompt was, why does the new model of the Mona Lisa look exactly like you? Before he even opened his mouth, his little sister threw down a chip and said, but Baron, aren't you invisible? I hired an artist to paint me literally like one of his French girls. Literally paint me so people could see me. The story went from there. Fun, fast, ridiculous. And if you've got a bunch of friends with a bunch of in-jokes, let them have at it. There's nothing better than that blood in the water when everyone gangs up on the best bullshitter in the party. Extraordinary Adventures of Baron Munchausen, based on the 1986 film by Monty Python's own Terry Gilliam. It is over the top. The Baron can ride away from a tiger on half a horse. He can get the Pope pregnant by accident. He can disguise himself as a gorilla and the Queen for a year and a half. He can ride cannonballs across as daily commutes back and forth. He can battle the entire French army using a baguette and a prostitute. Whatever it works, whatever it takes. He's the Baron. All of it works. On a similar note, Call of Cthulhu. This game was so successfully kickstarted, eventually when you run into horror or science fiction or tabletop RPGs, you're going to run across the name H.P. Lovecraft. You're going to learn the name Cthulhu, the massive squid anti-not-so-much god who sleeps in the sunken city of Relay. These guys are huge fans of H.P. Lovecraft, but if you go on the internet long enough, you're eventually going to come across cats. They own the internet. They wanted to combine the first two things on their Google search into a game. The 20-page free PDF, the 20-page free PDF has 1 page of rules. What? Oh, you only need to roll a single D6. You are house cats. You are house cats. Your job is to keep the stupid humans ignorant of the elder pet gods trying to inflect them, like the catnip from out in space, the Miogo, the evil fish god Doggone instead of Dagon. You stop mighty Cat Cthulhu from coming through. Your cat types are Cat Crobat, Scrapper, the Pampered, 2-footologist, who are like your resource cats, and Tiger Dreamer. Essentially, if you're trying to do something that your archetype fits, I'm a Scrapper. I want to fight back the dog. You automatically do it. If you do anything else, I want to try to go up that high balancing pole. Roll a d6, see if it works. Take away a potential injury by sacrificing one of your 9 lives, or just go out in a blaze of glory by sacrificing your last 9th life, in which true miracles are possible, because anything can happen when a cat really cares about its stupid human and needs food that badly. 1 page. The rest of it is just cat descriptions. It's a cat! Yay! Okay, little bit about this game, a little bit of background. This was originally called Panty Explosion. This is the psychic Japanese schoolgirl anime as an RPG. The creators of this also made Battle Royale, the RPG, using a lot of the same mechanics. I'm going to, because I've memorized it, the second paragraph of the first page of Tokyo Brain Pop or Explosion. Did the mic die? There you go. In Panty Explosion, you and your friends take on the roles of Japanese high school girls. At least one of you will have psychic powers. Using your collaborative storytelling efforts and your dice rolling, you and your friends will construct stories about how you and your friends defeated such adversary as shadowy agents, otherworldly demons, and the Japanese public education system. That third one is the killer. Here's the deal. Okay. Here's the deal. It's all based on how popular your character is. Remember the inspector's trait? You pick a club, you pick a goal, you pick something that highlights your character. You can draw on that for extra dice. I'm part of the track and field club. You're clearly going to be the most athletic. You're going to have more running endurance. You're going to be able to jump higher. You can use those dice. The least popular girl in your troop only rolls d6s. Successes are 5s and 6s. The most popular girl is going to roll a d10. Psychic girls, whenever they use their extra abilities of levitate and make heads explode, that's all you get. You roll d12s. Every time you do, the final fight, the final boss, the demon, gets an extra dice. The same mechanic for casting an arcane spell off of a papyrus scroll, staring down the bully, kicking your dad in the balls, swinging a sword. The same dice gets rolled, the same mechanic. What I love about this game most is that it takes the creative power away from the GM temporarily. When the GM sets up they're called the superintendent in this case, they set up the scene. You go around and all the other players describe the NPCs that are in the room, what time of day it is, how everybody is feeling. They set that scene, and then you go for it. You only have so many dice within all 5 of your elements. You have a certain number that works in all of your elements. Now, some people just want to play the school bully. You put everything into fire, which is like directly affecting the world. And if you want, you can roll like all 5 dice at once to try and get that success. But now you're out. You've got to rely on something else. Maybe the water dice to just kind of go with the flow. Oh, sorry, my bad, bro. Never mind. Maybe void to do something a bit more supernatural or of the mind. Maybe something air to just kind of dodge the problem altogether. Maybe you have enough earth dice where you just stand your ground. Here's the deal. What makes this game so fascinating is no one knows the outcome of an action. Not the player, not the GM. You pick 2 friends within the party. One of them is your best friend. Hi, best friend. One of them is your rival. Go to hell. I will see you there. If you roll a success, your best friend describes the outcome. If you don't roll a success, your rival is the outcome. And sometimes when I run this game, one person is everybody's rival, who's the most depressed player on the table. They are everyone's worst case scenario. They're still playing a character. Someone else is their best friend and rival, but you take the chance to flesh out what happens to all your friends. Here's your example. It is late Saturday night. I am out on the school golf course. There's during a thunderstorm. I'm on the golf course. I'm dodging an angry Tengu who's screaming, "Give me back my sword, give me back my sword." I roll a success. I want to not be hit by the Tengu. I roll a success. What happens? Yes, Jesus shows up and helps me. I fail the roll. What's going to happen? Yep, Tengu swipes right down, even with his gold-plated wings, off with my head. We're going to have to take a break to the nurse's station. But that's it. That's the brilliant part of it. You don't know the outcome. Your friends don't until you point to them and let them know. In the fantasy sitcom that I ran on YouTube, Dungeon Crawlers, which is about monsters in a D&D campaign that have to first survive being roommates, they play Panty Explosion, and they learn the horrors of having a copophiliac be everyone's rival. Oh, Thrak, you bastard. Maybe I'll play that if I have enough time at the end of that. But that's Tokyo Brain Pop, also known as Panty Explosion. The rule book is a manga. It's a comic book form where the players are around the table and then it goes to their girls in their room, showing you how to work those mechanics. Genius example. I love these guys. And now it's time to learn about Danger Patrol. Danger Patrol, Danger Patrol, my friends. It's the 25th and a half century. This is every love letter to Flash Gordon. Whatever the 1950s thought the 2000s was going to look like, this is that game, the love letter to those insane science fiction, super pulpy sci-fi worlds that would be exemplified by Queen and then by Flash Gordon. Who's the other inspiration? If you've ever seen Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, I apologize, but this is the game for that movie. You take on, not really race or class, but it's like Ghost, Detective, Alien, Commando, Two-Fisted, Pilot. What I love about Danger Patrol is you need a certain number of hits to make an action work, which means you've got to do more daring, dangerous stuff. You can only take 2 danger dice from something you're using, like one of your equipment or one of your skills. It's up to the other players to make something more dangerous, and you need those hits to get over certain obstacles. So there we were the Danger Patrol, and we were on the planet Neptune. We were talking to Queen Neptunia, who ended up betraying us to the main villain of the world is called I think they're the Scarlet Empire. Those red damn commie bastards! She betrayed us to them. To which we decided, all right, Mickey the Mage is going to try to drop kick her into that field of electric piranha behind her. What makes this so dangerous? I've never used my air canister before, so it might explode. George, how is this more dangerous? Oh, the jaws of the whale that we're in are closing. We're in a whale? We are now! What else is happening? You're allergic to salmon. There are salmon around us now, angry, poisonous salmon. So you have to roll those dice. We were on the edge of an event horizon, battling zombie, dinosaur, robot Stalin, like you do. We failed because our pilot was allergic to peanut butter. Because it was the orange dice that came up as the negative. Danger Patrol is fast, is stupid, is loose. It ran through a couple of drafts, but it's still totally free. You can also check out a website called, I think it's topsecretrpg.net. They did a 2-page RPG competition. 75 games were entered. 10 won. They're a lot of fun. But then I want to talk about Everyone is John. I'm going to be playing Everyone is John upstairs. Everyone is John is a game that is 12 years old and a page and a half to learn. Hi, John. Hi, John. Hello, John. Everyone here is John. John is a criminally insane man with schizophrenia living in the Midwest. You will all go upstairs and play his voices. As the voices of John, you have certain compulsions that you want to do. You want to wave your genitals at traffic. You want to binge out on candy. You want to get drunk. You want to yell at children or throw them off a bus. You want to discover the lost city of Atlanta. Essentially, you are always competing with your different willpower points, which are represented by your poker chips here. You're always fighting over who is going to take over John. Every voice has 2 skills that they're good at. For everything else you try to do, you roll a d6. If you fail the roll, all the voices then vote on who takes over John next. Now, some of the victories and the goals and the obsessions are easier than others. You know, waving your genitals at traffic is much easier than, say, discovering the lost city of Atlanta, considering half the time Atlanta is not found. So victory points are somewhere between 1 and 3. Now, if you openly tell the other voices what your obsession is, they might want to try to stop you. Key example. Once Scott openly said, I want to wave my genitals at traffic, Dan leaned over and looked at his character sheet. So Dan took over John next and said, the staples that were working, there's a paper cutter, right? I want to go upstairs and grab a Ziploc bag and go to the staff room and get some ice cubes. John passed out. It was worth it, according to Dan. Scott took over, took the Ziploc bag outside, and kept getting victory points. You can do everything you can to John. So long as John doesn't get injured or fall asleep, you remain in control, or until you fail a roll. You have to hurt this man. Everyone is John. Page and a half. Perfect RPG, perfect silly RPG. A great way to set this up, especially for younger players. Set them in the room that they're in. What do the obsessions want to do? That deals with the stuff in the room. And then walk around. Why not? And then there's Mouse Guard. Ooh. I will tell you, to learn Luke Crane's ideology on developing RPGs, it is... So if Dungeons & Dragons is the beer and pretzels and the roll and the hit and the damage and the hoigle, Mouse Guard and Burning Wheel are the wine, pita chips, and hummus of RPGs. Characters are designed based on instincts and based on beliefs. Here's the setup of Mouse Guard. It's the 1100s in England. Mice have their own little chivalric society. That's it. That's it. This is a game in which the players take a turn and then the GM takes a turn. Very simple example. So, you, the members of the Mouse Guard, you've got to go to Hollowroot to deliver this antivenom to that horrible disease that's ravaging the town. You've been sent out to do that. That's your mission. The GM's turn is the travel, the adventures of getting that quarter mile. It's a quarter mile down the road. You're an itty-bitty little mouse walking toward Mordor. And then it starts to rain. It's raining. That's nothing. But you're an itty-bitty little mouse. Deluge! And then you come across a snake, a simple snake. But you're an itty-bitty mouse. Hydra fight! You are rolling your dice to try and avoid injury or get through the difficulties that you can. Every success you roll is an extra success that you get to use during your turn when you arrive at that town, deliver the poison. So let's say someone has really done well at fighting or dodging the snake or building a boat to get over the deluge. All that dice can be spread out. I'm going to upgrade my equipment. I'm going to heal myself. I'm going to use some social dice. We get to it in the scenario, and the first thing Scott does was bank all 6 dice. I'm going to put these all into my social circles. I am the first cousin of the mayor. I'm going to walk around this town like it's my bitch. I know him. I know him. Everyone's going to like me at this town because now I'm the returning champion. Dan said, screw that, we've lost our sword, I need more equipment, I'm going to put this over here, put this over here. Burning Wheel wants to abstract some of the things that D&D wants to literally nickel and dime you for. But they also want to nickel and dime some things that it keeps abstract. The same system you use in combat to whittle down someone's hit points is the same mechanic you'll use to whittle down someone's wits in a duel of wits, to incite them, to obfuscate the point, to make them angry. And different skills or feats that you'll grab will buff those things. You can have a completely social character walk through and own that game and own that world. Just like in World of Darkness, you're not going to be penalized by having a completely mental or completely social character unless you're in a fight, then, you know, sword beats silver tongue. Unless you're a werewolf. Werewolves always kill. The idea behind Mouse Guard, players take a turn, GM takes a turn hosing them, players build up more successes to be used later on. Characters are built upon instincts and built upon, beliefs. Beliefs are there for internal conflict. And as they write in this game, the moment a player writes a word on a sheet, the GM must eventually have a point that rewards writing that on their sheet. If the dwarf writes, my instinct is if there's an earthquake, push the youngest to safety. That has to come up at some point because they committed to it. Also sets up the world if need be. Give you an example. Like for Burning Wheel, my character was an older, disparaged war cleric who fought in the old witch wars. My instincts are, if I see a witch, cast Firebolt. Period. Hands down. Not going to let them get the jump on me. Not going to let them lie to me. My beliefs are, everyone deserves a second chance. Anyone who converts to my religion will be forgiven of all past sins. All witches are evil and must be killed by me on sight. Well, the way Burning Wheel sets itself up for is it rewards the players for failing. It rewards the players for making bad choices, rewards the players for flipping over the cauldron and just stirring shit, making things more dangerous and complicated and stupid. Our party approached my descendant, my nephew, who's now risen to a baron. We need his troops. We want to talk to him about fortifying the river. Whispering in his ear is a goddamn witch. Had I chosen not to play to my instinct, which is burn the witch alive, nothing really would have happened. But if I launch that firebolt, if I start that shit, if the guards jump us, if we get captured, if we get something, I get a fate die. You can use a fate die at any point to make sure that your rolls are just constantly re-rolls. Anytime you roll a 6-sided dice and it becomes a 6, you use a fate dice, you can re-roll that. So I was explaining this story last night at the bar. Our priest Wyatt hadn't used a fate die in 2 years of a campaign. We were done with this city. Done. They had killed. One of our PCs was dead. Everything else got stolen. Wyatt turns around, gets on his knees, and starts praying. He burns a fate dice. He pulls out 20 dice, and anytime he rolls a 6, he just keeps re-rolling. And if you get 3 successes, you take control over the results. So at 14, our GM left to talk to Johnny Walker and his brother, the other Johnny Walker Black, to see what would happen. Wyatt prayed for rain. The continent had a new lake, and the city was under it. Wyatt stood up, shook his hands, and said, "Gentlemen, let's go get lunch." It puts the narrative power back in the player's hand. Let's do some more quick-to-learn games. I end with this one. The reason I build up for Dread is the following. Dread is the perfect system for a horror survival RPG. It works in any scenario. I have a Silent Hill scenario. I have a Fallout scenario that I run. I have a Purge scenario that I run with this game. I have a Walking Dead scenario with this game. The 80-page book is how you use the pools and the mechanics within the context of the world. There's no character sheet. There's no dice. There's no card that you pull. The only mechanic in Dread is a collectively pulled from Jenga tower. Based on how dangerous or how complicated or how injured you are, whatever task you want to do, you pull from the collective Jenga tower. You can pull 1, or you can pull as many as 5. Oh, we need the gasoline, so I'm gonna kick down the door even though it's a deadbolt, even though it's deadbolted. Pull 1. Oh, easy, I can pull 1. Boom. Zombies in it. Clear the room of zombies without alerting the others on the front lawn. Pull 3. Okay, until it just gets so wibbly. It's just like in a horror game. It builds up thematically the way that a horror movie will build up narratively until finally the first person dies. When the tower falls, when you're trying to pool, that's it. you are removed. You've been eaten. You've gone mad. You've been possessed. You've been taken out. Your character can no longer pool for any successes or help, and they can be killed off whenever the GM decides. If you decide to knock the tower over and say, fuck this shit, heroic sacrifice, you instantly succeed in the most badass, epic, helpful way imaginable, and then you die in the most badass, non-helpful way imaginable. You may have thrown the Humvee and the Jeep across the moat to get everyone else to safety. That threw out your back, and the zombies go, hey, buffet. How kind of these people. It works in, you can do a great alien isolation game to this. The fewer players that are there, so once the tower falls, you restack the tower, but you remove 3 pieces for every player under 5. The way I love to run this game is if I'm in someone else's house, I have everyone bring a candle over. And that's the only light that lights the room, is candles. And I put the tower in another room that's just as dark. When players want to pull from the tower, they have to go, like when we're at AJ and Marianne's, they have to go into the bedroom, and we'll either hear them die or we won't. They'll come back and they'll sit right down. When a character dies, I have them blow out their candle, but I also have them put their hands on the table in the bedroom where the tower is. It's sinister, it's creepy. I do another talk on improv theater, haunted houses, and immersive theater events on how to get the most tone and mood, how to basically use cheap theatrics to make sure that every RPG session is super crazy memorable, using free accesses from the internet, just using lighting, using the different setups that you have at your disposal in your house, basically. It's amazing what you can do when you set up alarms and text messages that your friends do not remember setting up. But that is Dread. It is, your character is based off of like 12 to 16 questions that the GM asks you. For example, like the Walking Dead scenario, you do the Rick character, basically, the small town sheriff. You don't ask yes or no questions. You don't ask, were you ever in prison? You ask, how did you get out on good behavior despite being convicted of murdering your wife? You ask questions like that. When did your fear of fire become an all-out paralyzing phobia? Now they're starting to pick up on that. Whose voice do you hear when someone screams? How many rounds do you have in the gun? Because you were lying last time. How long have you been sober? You start building in these different pros and weaknesses of every PC. And then hopefully as the GM, you've sculpted a scenario where they have to deal with that. Because if someone deals with something, if the pyrophobic gets close to a bonfire, he's going to have to pull to make sure that he's able to act and do what he wants, or he's just going to stand there paralyzed. To make sure that someone doesn't freak out and start attacking someone, because, you know, the hell, if you want a bunch of cops in your van, you're the one who's providing everything. Pull 2 to see if you don't start an argument right there, right now. Dread. It's fun. It's fantastic. I think it won the 2012 award for Best New RPG Development. Now, actual RPG podcasts. There are 2 kinds of podcasts that talk about RPGs, and they're all on the rise. One is the actual plays. That's where they're all around. It's a lot like what we did yesterday at the beginning of 5th edition D&D, where the GM has a microphone, all the players have a microphone, and you're listening to their role. You listen to them do the math. You listen to them BS on the side. But then there's the theory kind of RPGs in which the people are more likely to do reviews, or they'll talk about a game retrospectively, or how would you run this game in this city, or how would you run a vampire game during the Olympics? What kind of things would that be? I recommend for Pathfinder, Hardcore Adventures, Glass Cannon Podcast. They're all professional comedians, hardcore role players. They are hilarious. They've got great background music. They take a lot of advice in from their fans. Fandible, actual play podcast. These guys will do 2.5-hour sessions of one-shots or multiple 2.5-hour sessions of different games. They're fast, they're funny. It's only 3 players. I think her name is Maggie. Their girl player is one of the funniest people I've heard with a microphone. Indoorsman is running through a 5th edition D&D game. They are loose, they're silly, they're really immature because they're all in their early 20s, late teens, but that's totally fine. And of course, Critical Role on the Geek and Sundry Network. They're all professional actors in LA. They do a lot of the Twitch streaming games. It's always worth it to check out Matt Mercer and his team. Theory RPGs, if you're a fan of horror RPGs, for example, World of Darkness, check out Darker Days Radio. They're infrequent when they update, but they're still fun. I have to put up Miskatonic University. They deal with all Call of Cthulhu, H.P. Lovecraft. cosmic nihilism horror games as opposed to straight up zombie games. And Geek Knights, who, by the way, thank you for letting me run this panel here at my very first MAGFest. So that is in, so you know, my name is Uncle Yo, and just so you know, the show is a go. At noon today, we're going to be role-playing Roll for MAGFest. Is that at noon? It's going to be all of us running the tabletop RPG circuit, and you, the characters, you, the audience, are going to be playing collectively a PC with, hopefully, can get over his schizophrenic multiple personality disorder. The new podcast that I run is based off of the World of Darkness. It's called Chroniclers of Darkness. You can find that on YouTube. Next week, we start my Changeling the Lost story. We've already done a Vampire the Requiem and a Geist the Sinister story. You can also check out the fantasy sitcom that I wrote with a lot of the members of Team 4-Star, Channel Awesome. Brent Floss also comes on an episode. It's called Dungeon Crawlers. And just as an idea, an example of how far we've come. So here is the Burning Wheel character page, if I may. That thing that looks like the morning after pill on the bottom left, that is both your health for physical combat and verbal combat in terms of both your battle of wits and your physical battles. All of your skills to the right. One of your skills can be sword. Another one of your skills can be argue, boat building, smithing, lying. It rewards players for thinking outside of the combat box. And there's nothing wrong with the combat box. The combat box is fun, because slicing through an orc is always worth it. But let's go over the evolution of D&D while we still have just a little bit of time. First edition. Hello, gorgeous. I feel like at some point, like, air's going to rush out of a duct and its white dress is going to puff up. Like, that's how old this thing is. It's going to do a Marilyn Monroe any minute now. I'd like us to find the non-combat themes on this chart. Languages. All right, there we go. And thankfully, things evolved so fast into second edition. Saving throws? No. Oh, there it is. Height. Height is the one thing that is never written into the rules that affects combat. There we go. And advanced characters options. Okay, never mind. I guess it was an all combat game. Oh, good, third edition, where RPing really came into the D&D setup. There's bluff. There's diplomacy. However, bluff could be used by rogues in several abilities to, like, bluff that you have a weapon or bluff that you're having an attack, provoking an attack of opportunity. So we'll cancel that out. Okay, so there was intimidate you use in combat all the time. Diplomacy. There we go. Good old little. If I had a laser pointer, I couldn't even point to it. It's tiny. Everything else, combat-oriented. Oh, I remember you, Burning Wheel. Oh, that was the system that I was just going over initially. But that is Beyond D&D, as I said. Between 5 and 8 p.m. tonight, we're going to be upstairs in the tabletop setting. I'm going to be running Everybody is John, in which all the PCs are different voices in a schizophrenic man's head fighting for power, and Baron Munchausen, which is the bullshit your friends in a competitive storytelling RPG. That being said, remember, game on, include everyone, and say yes and to everything. Put the power back in the player's hands. They'll thank you for it. Thank you for joining us for Beyond D&D. It's been a pleasure, guys.